Dear friends, welcome! In this video, we will take a detailed look at a significant astrological event that takes place on February 14th. This is the transition of Saturn into the sign of Aries. February this year is already a very intense month from an astrological point of view. It brings major changes. It includes eclipses and important planetary transits. However, Saturn's move into Aries is the most significant event of the month, and it affects everyone. Saturn is the planet responsible for the foundation of our lives. It governs structure, boundaries, responsibility, karma, and everything that holds reality together, from state systems to the skeleton of the human body. Saturn is often described as the ruler of personal karma. At this moment, it is completing its journey through Pisces, the last sign of the Zodiac. On February 14th, Saturn enters Aries, the first sign of the Zodiac, where it will remain until nearly April 2028. This means that a major Saturnian cycle is coming to an end and a new one is beginning. February 14th is not just another astrological update. It marks the start of a new 30-year karmic cycle. Saturn spends approximately 2 years in each zodiac sign and completes a full cycle in about 30 years. Because of this, Saturn's transit through Aries happens only once every 3 decades. Each time, it brings a restructuring of social systems and a strict reevaluation of leadership, willpower, personal initiative, and ambition. Historically, Saturn entering Aries is associated with crises in existing political and social models. On a global level, this period often coincides with the launch of new systems of governance, reforms related to the military, state institutions, and legislative structures. To understand what lies ahead, it is important to look at how previous Saturn-in-Aries periods unfolded, what challenges they brought, and how individuals and societies navigated them. This allows us to prepare consciously and avoid unnecessary friction. First, let us briefly recall what Saturn represents in astrology. Saturn is the planet of structure, time, maturity, boundaries, and responsibility. It is often called the Lord of Karma. It acts as a strict teacher that demands discipline, resilience, and the ability to rely on oneself. When Saturn enters a new sign, it rewrites the rules in the areas governed by that sign. If we look at Saturn visually, we see a planet surrounded by rings of ice. It is cold, compressing, and restrictive, but within that compression, it creates structure. Aries, the sign Saturn is now entering, is the first sign of the Zodiac. It represents fire, impulse, action, beginnings, leadership, and will. Aries energy says, I want, I move, I act. When the cold, structuring force of Saturn enters this impulsive and fiery sign, tension is inevitable. The meeting of ice and fire creates pressure, tests of will, enforced discipline, and the formation of new structures that restrain raw impulse. To better understand this dynamic, let us recall previous Saturn-in-Aries cycles. From April 1937 to July 1939, the world stood on the brink of the Second World War. It was a tense and rigid period marked by direct confrontations between control and force. The next cycle, from March 1967 to May 1969, coincided with student uprisings, the hippie movement, and the sexual revolution. People challenged authority and tradition on a mass scale, while Saturn imposed limits and consequences. This period also included events such as the Prague Spring of 1968. The most recent Saturn-in-Aries transit occurred between April 1996 and February 1999. This was a time of rapid technological growth, particularly the rise of the internet and mobile communication. It was also marked by major economic disruptions, including the Russian financial default in August 1998, and the Asian financial crisis of 1997 to 1998. All of these periods share a common theme. Old structures collapse before new ones are fully formed. Because astrology operates in cycles, analyzing past transits helps us understand current trends. During this upcoming Saturn-in-Aries period, we are likely to witness restructuring in global financial and resource systems, economic shocks, and the dismantling of outdated models of authority, followed by the gradual creation of new frameworks. On a personal level, Saturn in Aries demands greater responsibility for one's own life. It pushes toward maturity, discipline, and conscious action. To soften Saturn's influence and work with it rather than against it, it is best to begin what has long been overdue immediately after the transition. Aries does not tolerate hesitation. It is the sign of the warrior and the pioneer. In Aries, Saturn loses its usual slow pace and begins to act through pressure, crisis, and sharp limitations, especially if a person avoids initiative. This transit requires initiative, personal authority, and leadership from each of us. To enter this period more smoothly, it is important to consciously take responsibility in at least one area of life, even a small one, rather than waiting for circumstances to force action. Saturn supports those who impose discipline upon themselves. Although it is often called a difficult planet because of its restrictive nature, Saturn does not remove support. It demands maturity. When effort is made consistently, when responsibilities are carried without abandonment, Saturn opens access to deep and lasting resources. What Saturn gives is earned, but once earned, it is not taken away. On a personal level, this transit sends a clear signal. It is time to stop living by inertia and start living with intention. During Saturn's movement through Aries, excuses such as "it's not the right time" or "I'm not ready yet" will no longer work. Saturn in Aries does not tolerate passivity or weak will. If responsibility is avoided, Saturn creates pressure, not as punishment, but as a way to awaken inner strength. It is as if Saturn asks, "Do you really want this? Prove it through action, not words." This is why rebuilding inner stability is essential during this period. Everything that strengthens the body, the nervous system, daily structure, nutrition, and focus will work in your favor. Daily rituals are especially supportive. Morning practices, breathing exercises, and clear planning for the day ahead help create inner armor. What brings order will protect you. Procrastination, constant complaints, and reactive behavior, on the other hand, can lead to breakdowns, conflicts, and obstacles. Now, it is not enough to want something. It is necessary to build a path toward it step by step. As Saturn begins its movement through Aries, define your intention and take the first step toward your goal, even if it is small. State your intention clearly. It does not need to be a large project. What matters is conscious action. It's important that your intention is sincere. Do not wait for support. This is a time to move forward despite everything, independently and with persistence. Overall, this transit can become a powerful moment of personal reset. Day by day, Saturn can help you grow stronger if you act from your own will. This is a truly mature position, and it is precisely this maturity that creates real freedom. To enter a harmonious resonance with the energy of Saturn in Aries, I invite you to work with a short affirmation and a simple practice. The affirmation sounds like this: "My discipline is my freedom, and I create my own path." It is important to remember that Saturn, especially in Aries, does not respond to empty words. It responds to concrete action. That is why I suggest doing a practice called the personal code. In the comments, continue the sentence, "I take responsibility for," write one specific commitment, an action you will perform regularly. For example, I take responsibility for 20 minutes of physical movement every morning. I take responsibility for reading 10 pages of a professional book each week. I take responsibility for not checking my phone during the first hour after waking up. Any clear and realistic commitment works. By creating a simple but consistent obligation, you form a positive resonance with the energy of Saturn in Aries. Once an intention is fixed publicly, space begins to support its realization. Saturn, which values discipline and responsibility, opens access to new and more stable opportunities. In this way, you activate a powerful initial impulse of support from Saturn, the ruler of karma, and you can work with this support until Saturn leaves Aries in 2028. Now let us look at how Saturn's transit through Aries will manifest for each zodiac sign. Dear Aries, Saturn in your sign marks a period of deep maturation. Attention shifts to your identity, goals, behavior, and personal direction. You may notice increased demands on yourself and on others. Life will consistently push you toward greater responsibility. This is not a time to hide or perform roles. Honesty with yourself and with others becomes essential. It becomes important to fully inhabit your body and presence, to assert yourself without excessive ego. Significant changes in appearance, image, or communication style are possible. This period lays the foundation for a new identity. Discipline should be used as fuel for growth. Keeping a decision journal can be especially helpful. It allows you to track progress and regulate impulsive reactions. Affirmation for Aries: I am my own support. My will creates rather than destroys. Wishing you strength and clarity. Dear Taurus, Saturn enters your 12th house, the realm of the subconscious, closure, and inner processing. This is not a period of outward action, but of deep internal work. You may feel a desire for solitude and reduced external stimulation. The psyche needs rest, and the soul requires renewal. Old fears, unresolved obligations, and emotional residues may surface in order to be released. This is a preparation phase before a new life cycle begins. Intuition may sharpen, and insights can arrive through dreams, bodily sensations, or subtle signs. It is important not to resist what is leaving and not to cling to illusions. This is a favorable time for psychological work, spiritual practices, and completing unfinished processes. Think of it as a quiet cleansing phase before awakening. Affirmation for Taurus: I release the past and meet the present in peace with myself. Wishing you ease and inner clarity. Dear Gemini, for the next 2.5 years, Saturn moves through your 11th house, the sphere of social circles, long-term goals, and collective projects. This transit brings a serious reassessment of your environment and aspirations. You will clearly see who truly belongs in your life and who is merely background noise. Some connections may end, creating space for more mature and meaningful relationships. Dreams now require structure. It is no longer enough to imagine. Consistent action becomes essential. If discipline and persistence are applied, the results by the end of this transit can be substantial. You may join a new group or step into a coordinating or leadership role within a community. This period strengthens your influence in social contexts. The key is focus. What you build now has long-term significance. Affirmation for Gemini: I choose connections that strengthen my purpose. Wishing you steady progress. Dear Cancer, Saturn rises to the top of your chart, entering the 10th house of career, status, and public responsibility. This is one of the most significant periods of your life. It is time to step forward, define your direction, and build long-term professional foundations. Saturn demands effort. Decisions must be made, responsibility must be accepted, and authority will be tested. Some may change careers, others may reach a new level of recognition. Themes related to leadership, parental figures, and authority structures become especially important. This is not a period for compromise, but for constructing a solid future base. What you establish now can shape your position for many years. It is recommended to clearly define goals for the next 2 to 3 years and create a realistic, structured plan. Affirmation for Cancer. I build my path guided by my principles and inner strength. Wishing you resilience and confidence. Dear Leos, Saturn enters your 9th house for the next 2.5 years. This is a period of building a new life philosophy. Old beliefs, worldviews, and ideas will be tested for maturity. You may feel drawn to study, research, or to reconsider your spiritual or professional direction. Important changes may occur in matters related to education, teaching, legal issues, or foreign countries. What once felt like inspiration alone will now require structure, commitment, and clear direction. This is a favorable time to create an intellectual project, begin a course of study, or engage in serious self-education, but only if the desire is genuine, not formal, not superficial, real. Travel during this period may become less frequent, but more meaningful and educational. Saturn will show you how much true wisdom you carry and how you use it. From the very beginning of Saturn's transition into Aries, it is recommended to study something structured and deep rather than superficial. This knowledge can become a source of growth and inner support. Affirmation for Leo. I live in alignment with my truth and expand my horizons. Wishing you clarity and strength. Dear Virgos, over the next 2.5 years, Saturn moves through your 8th house. This sector is associated with transformation, debts, dependencies, and intimacy. This is a time of deep psychological processes. Hidden fears, control patterns, and old emotional attachments may surface. You may need to deal with shared finances, inheritance, loans, or legal obligations. Saturn will demand a mature approach to both material and emotional resources. Relationships, personal and professional, will either deepen and become more serious or end if there is no real substance. This transit helps release excess on all levels, both literally and symbolically. It is a favorable period for therapy, inner work, energetic practices, and building long-term financial strategies. Although challenging, this is a powerful phase of growth through conscious effort. It is important to put order into finances, debts, and personal boundaries. End toxic connections yourself, even if they feel familiar. Affirmation for Virgo. I release what drains me and keep only what truly nourishes me. Wishing you resilience and renewal. Dear Libras, for the next 2.5 years, Saturn enters the sphere of partnerships, personal and professional. All relationships will now require a mature and responsible approach. Unions may strengthen and formalize, or they may end if there is no real foundation. This is not a time to shift responsibility onto others. Saturn may bring encounters with mature, reliable partners. Business relationships will also become more structured and realistic, without illusions. If you seek love, it must be built on trust, boundaries, and mutual respect. If loneliness arises, it is time to clearly define what you want from a partner. Writing down desired qualities can help Saturn align circumstances in your favor. This is a transit where mature love is rewarded. Affirmation for Libra. I choose honest, mature relationships and act with integrity. Wishing you balance and stability. Dear Scorpios, for the next 2.5 years, Saturn moves through your zone of daily routine, work, and health. This transit helps you bring order to your schedule, responsibilities, and physical well-being. Work conditions may become stricter, or you may change format, position, or even begin something new from scratch. Anything inefficient will gradually leave your life. Professional relationships may require clearer boundaries and fair task distribution. Saturn teaches respect for work, your own and that of others. Health becomes especially important, particularly the spine, joints, skin, and digestion. If you have wanted to establish healthier habits, this is an excellent time. Create a realistic daily schedule, regulate sleep, nutrition, and workload. This structure will bring a sense of control and stability. Affirmation for Scorpio. My work is an expression of respect for myself. I create stability through order. Dear Sagittarians, Saturn enters your house of joy, creativity, and self-expression for the next 2.5 years. At first glance, this may feel like the end of a celebration. In reality, it is an opportunity to transform talent into mastery. What was once done purely for pleasure can now become a serious project. Creative individuals will need discipline, training, and long-term commitment. Romantic relationships will be tested for durability. Attention may also shift toward children, literal or symbolic, such as projects or businesses. Some may become parents. Others may step into a mentoring role. The key is not to lose faith in yourself and not to fear sustained effort. This is a period when the foundation of a significant creative path can be laid. Bring your hobby under structured care and invest real energy into it. Affirmation for Sagittarius. I unite love and maturity. My creativity is my path. Wishing you inspiration grounded in purpose. Dear Capricorns, for the next 2.5 years, Saturn enters your house of family, roots, and foundations. This is a time to rethink your relationship with home, both externally and internally. Some may renovate, move, or deal with property matters. Others will work through ancestral patterns, forgiveness, or boundaries with parents. This is a phase of maturation through domestic lessons. You may feel a desire for solitude, or, conversely, for a more structured home life. Home becomes not just a place to live, but a source of stability and inner strength. It is a favorable time to invest in long-term security and emotional foundations. This is a period of building, not with bricks, but with intention. Affirmation for Capricorn. I build my home within myself. I am the master of my world. Wishing you solidity and peace. Dear Aquarians, for the next 2.5 years, Saturn moves through your zone of communication, learning, short journeys, and thinking patterns. This is a time to filter information, take responsibility for words, and refine communication. You may begin teaching, writing, or studying something in depth. The quality of your conversations becomes crucial. Superficial talk and dishonesty will naturally fall away. Saturn also brings responsibility related to documents, transport, and technology. Equipment may require more care. Routes and plans should be structured carefully. Saturn rewards clarity of thought and respect for knowledge. Affirmation for Aquarius. My words are precise, my thoughts are clear, and I listen with attention. Wishing you focus and insight. Dear Pisces, for the next 2.5 years, Saturn enters your house of finances, values, and self-worth. This is a period of strict financial review. What does not work will leave. If you are willing to work consistently, build systems, and manage resources consciously, you can create long-term stability. You may revise desires and learn to live more simply but more securely. Questions of professional value, boundaries, and self-respect become central. This period may feel demanding, but it is highly productive for those who wish to take control of their financial reality. Tracking income and expenses, as well as working with self-worth, is essential. Affirmation for Pisces. I know my value and assert it with confidence. Wishing you abundance built on self-respect. As Saturn begins its journey through Aries, we are entering a time that does not reward waiting or hesitation. This is not a period for observation from a distance. It is a time for embodied choice. Saturn in Aries asks each of us a simple but demanding question. Where are you willing to take responsibility for your own life? Not tomorrow, not when conditions improve, but now. This transit does not require perfection. It requires honesty, consistency, and action, even small action, taken from your own will. Whatever you begin during this period, begin it consciously. Build slowly. Strengthen your foundations. Choose discipline, not as punishment, but as self-respect. Remember, Saturn does not take away what is real. It removes what is ungrounded so that something lasting can be built. If you walk this path with awareness, patience, and inner integrity, this cycle can become a powerful reset, one that gives you strength, clarity, and a deeper sense of freedom. Thank you for being here. Move forward with intention.